welcome. Thank you for joining tonight's event on international travel for women with, talking about the topics and questions that especially pertain to women as we travel abroad. The event tonight is hosted by Traverse Journeys, and I'm the co-owner of Traverse Journeys. My name is Laura Ham. Traverse Journeys is a travel company that provides travel opportunities in a couple dozen plus countries around the world. We have a motto of people, planet, and purpose. So we're really focused on, measuring our impact and making sure that, environmentally and socially that we're creating a positive impact on the places that we visit. And at the moment, we're hosting a couple events every month, usually virtually, to stay engaged and to, go over different topics and questions that people may have at this time while we're all waiting, biding our time to use that passport again. So I just want to welcome, we have a few other women travelers who have been invited to sort of act as panelists for tonight's event. So without further ado, I'll just give a little introduction to each of you, and then you can jump in and say a little bit more about yourself. So we have Dev Walker, who is a New York City-based travel writer, and she's done a lot of travel in Europe and as well as 7 countries in Africa, Latin America, Asia, has a wide breadth of experience to pull from. Deb, do you want to tell us a little bit about your travel style or, favorite places that you've been?
Sure. So I've been to 40 countries so far. It would have been 50 if it wasn't for COVID, but I'm trying to move on from that. My travel style is overall adventure travel. I like to focus on off the beaten path routes. So I try to avoid your typical tourist stops. So anything adventure related, anything authentic. I like to go where the locals go. I like to eat where the locals eat. I like to support local businesses. So anything that will make me feel like I live there as opposed to just being a tourist there is what I like to focus on when I travel. Some favorite destinations, I would say Mauritius in East Africa is a favorite. Italy is a favorite. Switzerland is another favorite, absolutely beautiful. And one more, I'll say, it's another favorite. I'll throw Ireland in there because Ireland really surprised me. Yeah. Those are my top 4.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Deb. It's really great to have you here with us. And then we also have Alina joining us from Costa Rica, where she's lived for the last 6 years, although she is from Germany originally. She's traveled a lot in Europe as well as South America. Alina, do you want to tell us a little bit about your travel style or favorite places you've been?
Yes, of course. So, like you already said, I'm from Germany, so I've been as a child a lot in Europe, but then when I started traveling by myself, I went out a lot of backpack style. So I went to Spain, I walked the Camino de Santiago, so that's a pilgrimage way, and that's when I first started getting into the backpacking. And after that, I went to South America. So I started in Chile, and I really love Chile. So Chile, Bolivia, I kind of got stuck there in a good way. So I was planning to do way more of South America I had 6 months, so I had quite a while of time, but I only made it through those 2 countries because it was so good. And like Dev just said, I like to travel. I like to go where the locals are. I like to eat where the locals are to get to know people. And this is why I kind of ended up in Chile for quite a while. So I almost stayed there for 2 months instead of just like 2 weeks. And
Great. Excellent. Yeah. And just a little quick note too, for anybody who read the event description and saw that Leo was supposed to join us. Leo is Alina's sister, and she had to run her dog to the vet on an emergency. So we're grateful that Alina could step in, and as well, she's also an experienced traveler. So thank you, Alina.
Of course, you're welcome.
And Jennifer, last but not least, is joining us from Virginia in the US. And she has traveled again in Europe, but as well throughout Nepal and Africa and China. Yeah, I'll let you take it away, Jennifer. Tell us a little about your travel style or favorite places you've been.
Yeah, I would say I'm not picky, like with my travel style. I've traveled with my family. I've traveled just with my kids, even when they were little, like around 7 or so. I took my son to Nepal and my daughter to Nepal, not at the same time, but they both happened to be 7. But I've done a lot of mission work and philanthropy. That's why I went to China and Africa and Nepal. But I also just enjoy, obviously, solo female travel. My favorite places, I would have to say, and I was on this trip with Traverse and I'm headed back, is I really enjoyed Lisbon. I loved the variety there. I loved the history, the food. I didn't know what to expect, and I just loved it when I was there. And then this may be kind of nerdy, I think it is, but I absolutely geek out over Niagara Falls. I don't know why, but I think like so many people I know haven't been there, and I feel that that is one of those must go see places. And last time it was a media trip I went on, but we went on a helicopter ride over the falls and we went zip lining over the falls. I mean, there's just really fun stuff to do there that you really can't do anywhere else. So that's kind of, I don't know, I really enjoy the local experience. I wouldn't say Niagara Falls is like a locals experience at all. I hate places like Pigeon Forge and Myrtle Beach. If you know where those are, like to me, those are just too busy, too tacky. But yeah, I really enjoy authenticity. So whether I do that through working in a location that I go or just eating the local food or meeting locals. That's one thing that attracted me to Traverse too, was even though it's an afternoon or a day, the fact that we get to do a little bit of volunteering and get to know a certain organization that's helping the locals in the area too. I really enjoy that aspect of Traverse. So
yeah, it's been great to have you along. And Jennifer's also a travel writer. And I should mention, so if you wanted to catch up with Jennifer or Deb, you can follow Jennifer at Travel Like a Prince, and you can put your URL in the chat if you want, Jennifer. And
okay.
Deb is Walk with Ms. Walker. So feel free to put that in the chat so that people can find you and follow along on your journeys. Excellent. So we've definitely got quite a few more people that have filtered in. So just again, thank you and welcome. We've just been doing some introductions for tonight's event. And now we're just going to go ahead and get started. So the way that we're going to kind of structure tonight's event is I'll start by asking questions to our 3 lovely ladies that people have written in when they registered, and just kind of the common themes of the information that people are looking for. And then from there, we'll open it up for Q&A for anyone that's joining us this evening to jump in and ask any other questions that are on the top of your mind. So with that said, I'll just start off with, I guess, more of a general question, just to kind of, get things going in terms of your experiences, ladies. So what would you say has been your overall takeaway from your experiences traveling abroad as a woman? Like, how do you feel about having traveled abroad as a woman? And kind of, what are the takeaways or the lessons and impressions that you have of that experience? As a general one to start, then we'll hone in.
Okay. Jennifer, do you want to start?
I'd say for me that I used to be a really picky eater growing up, and I am a vegetarian, so some people would say that's picky, but whatever. But I really feel that traveling has opened my palate up a lot, so I love it when I go a place and there's a certain ethnic restaurant. I'm like, ooh, I love that food, or I want to try that because I haven't been to that country. So I think as far as expanding my palate, that's been really nice to discover new flavors. But also, I don't know why, but I just feel that there's something empowering about being a woman and having a number of countries under your belt. I don't know, especially if you've been there with a group of girls or solo or something like that. I mean, there's just, I've been there, done that, conquered that type of thing. And I mean, I don't know why that is, but it's just empowering to me in some way.
Yeah, that's a great word, empowering, definitely. Alina or Deb, feel free to.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna go.
Okay.
So yeah, for me, it's been especially often I hear when I was traveling. I was 23 when I left Germany, and I started traveling, and everybody was often like, "Okay, are you traveling alone? Aren't you scared?" And I never felt threatened. So it's always, of course, people are always thinking like, "Oh my God, you're out there in the world and all by yourself." But it's really easy to make connections on the way. And yeah, like Jennifer just said, it is really empowering seeing like, I've been there, I did this on my own, and I didn't rely on anybody to do that. And so often it is that people that, yeah, you travel and you just learn. No, of course you can't say nobody, but 99% of the people don't want to harm you. So it's like everybody is open and is happy to receive you. And if you're not a completely jerk and super ignorant, people are always happy to help you, even if you're getting in tricky situations. And yeah, it's a good experience to do that by yourself. And I think it's way easier to form connections to following travel people if you're traveling alone than if you travel with a friend or with your boyfriend.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. It is a good way to kind of break down expectations. Sometimes we've got quite a few ideas in our head that travel tends to, break through those ideas. Excellent. And Deb, what about you?
So for me, my biggest takeaway would be to piggyback off of what Alina said, is that majority of people are good. Regardless of what the news says, regardless of what the movies say, regardless of what the internet says, majority of people are good. There are so many people in all these countries who are actually excited to show you their home and show you the things that they like to do and just show you their way of life. I really do believe that, I mean, of course you have bad people everywhere, but I do think that the majority of people are good. I left my $3,000 camera in an Uber in Brazil, and this man did not speak a word of English, but he made it his business to find someone who spoke English to call my cell phone and find me so he could bring me my camera back. He didn't have to do that. So, I've had plenty of crazy stories where random stranger just helped me or returned something to me. I once lost my wallet in the Philippines. A guy chased after me to give it back to me. So yeah, for me, majority of people are good. That's my biggest takeaway from just traveling the world.
Yeah, amen. I mean, and that, is usually echoed in many voices of, female travelers, that a lot of our fears are, can honestly start to dissipate the more that you travel, because yeah, people are generally good. And it's humbling, like how good they are sometimes. like I don't know if I'm that good.
One of my family members actually made a joke that if that was my camera in New York, it would have been on Craigslist 20 minutes later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, which brings up an interesting point for anyone who's joining us from the US. I know there has been a lot of studies or, statistics that show that if you are very concerned about safety when traveling, that it's actually often safer to travel abroad in another country than it is to live in the US. So if you're surviving the US, okay, then you can probably travel abroad too. So yeah, not necessarily the best thing, but let's get into some nitty gritty details in terms of the tips and advice and experiences that you guys have had. So a lot of people are asking about tips for, we'll kind of break it down into a few different categories. So when you're planning your itinerary in terms of the route and the transport and accommodations, do you have any advice, specifically for women travelers that would be, good for them to keep in mind?
Who's gonna say?
Feel free to just jump in, guys. Yeah. Don't be shy.
I mean, if you're booking something ahead of time, I would say to read the reviews, because often there are reviews from female travelers. I mean, I've stayed in hostels. Like last time I went to Dallas, I stayed in a hostel and I'd never done that before. And so I didn't know what I was getting myself into, how many people would be in my room, but it was great. And it was adorable and all, but I kind of knew what to expect because I read the reviews. If you're out and about and you just are looking for a place on the fly, I think, you know, using your intuition as far as what section of town it is, kind of what it looks like. I know Laura and I were talking about this the other day, but, you know, intuition was given to you for a reason. And if you don't feel right about something, then that's kind of, you know, don't continue in a path if you feel like, oh, I just feel something. And then that something may be telling you that's not what you should be doing and it may be unsafe. So, but yeah, I would say as far as that, you know, to kind of just be aware and see what other people are saying about the places and areas.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think basically the same. It is really important to see where you're comfortable at. In general, so I have been traveling mostly with hostels, so I never really stayed in private hotel rooms. Everybody is always really of course not everybody, but most of the people are respectful, and everybody knows that when you're traveling you have all your stuff with you, so of course you shouldn't leave all your stuff laying around, but just have a good eye on it. And in general, I'm not a big fan of making plans, so I'm most of the times just going into town and looking that I'm getting there before sunset, so I can have a look around while it's still bright and see what the scenery is. And I looked up maybe a few hostels beforehand on the internet, or back then actually I used the Lonely Planet, and just looked it through, and then I walk there and see if I'm comfortable there.
I think we have a hacker situation.
Oh boy.
Speaking of Italy earlier.
Hold on a second, guys. I think I need to boot somebody. Sorry about this. Usually there are ways to.
Florence is beautiful, I do have to say. It's a beautiful town.
Okay, all right. Moving on.
And yeah, so I really like to travel with public transport. So that's one of my things, because it's mostly cheaper. And it's not mostly cheaper, it is definitely always cheaper. And you see something from the country, because if you just get into a taxi or just into a direct bus, it's always hard to feel something. So it's nice to get on the regular bus and talk to people as well.
Cool. Excellent.
A tip from me would be, I would recommend, especially if it's your first time, try to avoid arriving at night, regardless of how cheap the flight is. Don't arrive at night, because it's actually way more difficult to get your bearings of a new place when you're arriving at night. It's probably harder to get a taxi. You know, you don't want that paranoia. I always think that it's just worth it to spend an extra few dollars to get there during the day, so that way you can familiarize yourself on your way to your accommodations, you know, in the daytime. So I would definitely advise anyone to try to get there during the day. And overall, you end up getting more bang for your buck, because if you land at night, then you just kind of wasted your money for that day at the hotel. So if you land at 10 p.m., check-in is at 3, you kind of lost that day. And I don't like to throw money away. So try to get there during the day, and talk to your hotel staff or your Airbnb host, or if you're like Alina and you stay in hostels, talk to one of the hostel employees. All those people will always give you good recommendations on like where to go, what to do, and just stay in like a central area, so it's easy for you to get to like different things. Try not to do, especially again if it's your first time, try not to stay somewhere like far out and far away from things if you're still trying to get your feet wet in the whole like solo travel space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are all great tips. And I'll just add to that too, like when reading the reviews or doing your research, you know, beyond just the reviews, it's good to research like the neighborhood and the area like that this is in. You know, you're arriving to like a city that you've never been to, and you know there are, you know, probably better or worse areas. Definitely, yeah, avoiding arriving at night is a good one. And also just in terms of if you're traveling as a solo female, I mean, Alina touched on this a little bit, but yeah, like trying to choose places where you're gonna meet people. So hostels or even like small B&Bs and boutique hotels, all of those lend themselves more easily to meeting other travelers and, kind of linking up with other people. So yeah, excellent. Moving on. So what about in terms of what to pack or what to carry with you when you're out and about? Any tips for our lovely ladies? Deb, you had some good ones about the devices, I remember.
Yes. I always carry a portable charger with me because, we have our phones out a lot. We're either texting or we're taking pictures or we're taking videos or what have you. So definitely get yourself a good portable charger. You can get one for maybe between 30 and $60 right on Amazon. So I definitely recommend a good portable charger, a small bag, not necessarily like a big tote bag that's going to attract a lot of attention, because there are some professional pickpockets who will go into your bag and you won't even feel it. So I would say get like a small crossbody bag. You can get those from pretty much anywhere, and just carry, a couple of dollars on you, and try to put money in different places. So get creative, put some in your bag, for women, put some in your bra, put some in your shoe. So that way, worst case scenario, if something does happen, you're not, completely lost out there without any money. So small bag, a portable charger. What else would I say to pack? Usually in most places, believe it or not, it does get chilly at night. Even when I go to like the islands at nighttime, it gets breezy. So always have like a little shawl or like a cardigan or something like that.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah. Our devices are good. Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. Yeah, so yeah, device wise, I would always say as well, yeah, make sure that you have a good camera with you if you're interested in taking photos. If you say like, okay, my phone is not sufficient enough for that, but always think about you have to carry that all the time with you, right? So it's easy. I would always pack light. I love to go on treks, so for me hiking clothes are always a good idea, to have several pairs of shoes, because they get wet and then it's just super annoying. They will get stinky anyway. That's just the way it is when you travel and when you're hiking. And depending in which climate you go, like if you go in warm climates, bring bug repellent, because it's going to be really itchy.
Amen. Yeah. Okay.
I would say, I mean, a must for me is a luggage scale if I'm checking a bag. That is one thing that we've learned to bring along with us. But I would say just to kind of pare it down, like if you put on a lot of makeup, you may not need to take your full makeup routine. I mean, you're going to be traveling. How many people are you going to see day after day after day? I mean, can you get away with, a couple of outfits so that you don't have to have, 2 weeks worth of outfits for the 2 weeks that you'll be gone? Other essentials, I bought a raincoat and an umbrella that just pack really tiny so that I always have it with me. I actually learned this in Lisbon because the girls, everybody that it was like we saw the high for one day was 70 and we thought that it was going to be 70 the whole time, and it literally was like 50 something and rainy. And then so we like all went shopping to buy sweaters and jackets and things like that. So that's something you don't want to do. So I learned, okay, I've got a raincoat that I take with me, an umbrella. And then I also have a puffer coat. Because they're made with down in them, they can pack and squish really, really small. And a lot of them come in a little bag so that you can really, like, you might think like, oh my goodness, a puffer coat is huge. Well, it actually is good for so many situations and it can pack really, really small. Maybe like one or two, like a pair of shoes that's tried and true that you can wear all over, to do most of the things, and maybe a nicer pair. Like just kind of get your favorites together and make sure, like I have one dress that rolls so nice and tight, but it's a long dress and it just packs well and travels well. Like kind of curate and pare down even if you only use that stuff every time you travel, if you're traveling a lot, it's just nice to have those pieces that you can count on and not have to pack every time and not have to be like, oh my goodness, I have to check a bag and I've got my carry-on and how am I going to get with all this? I mean, I've actually, for the most part, gotten everything down so that I can just travel with a carry-on, with, even with major trips when I've got, media meetings and things like that, when I've got to wear nicer stuff, I've got, just nice. Pare it down.
Yeah, for sure. I think any experienced traveler will tell you that, the several trips that they've been on, like their bags get smaller and smaller each time. So just a couple things to add to all these great suggestions. Headlamp or some sort of flashlight is good. The flashlight on your phone drains your battery quite a lot. So having a separate flashlight is good. And abroad, streets are not always as well lit as we're used to in some of North American countries, or, so yeah, having some sort of light or headlamp is good. And then I think someone mentioned like a money belt or whatever to carry, with you. There's also this great like infinity scarf that's like super stylish, and it has like a little hidden like zipper pocket in it, so you can put like passport or money or cards or whatever in that little like hidden pocket in the scarf. So it's from Waypoint Goods. I'll write that in the chat. It's just a great travel piece, I think. So yeah. And then also there are, if you're really concerned about safety, like in your hotel room, you can get a door jammer to stick under the door when you're in the room. And also anyone who's like backpacking or has their luggage with them a lot, a padlock for keeping it safe or yeah. Cool. Let's move on to in terms of, behavior when you're traveling abroad. What are some tips or advice that you would give in terms of, interacting with the different cultures and, what to do, what not to do, things like, walking alone at night in a, not so great looking area or things, yeah, like that. Any sort of tips for behavior or do's and don'ts?
I would just say to do your research before you get there. My favorite flight outfit is actually a pair of like camo leggings with a white top. And then I started to read about these countries. I haven't been to any of them, but that don't, like, if you wear camo, that's a really bad thing. So just knowing that, like, oh, I need to maybe change my flight outfit, and things like that. And then I was thinking about this earlier when people were talking about hostels and stuff. I think one thing to remember, and again, like everyone else has said, it's not 100% of the people. It's the 0.01% of the people that we're worried about. Most people are good. But just to remember, like, if you are staying in a hostel, everybody is there doing the same thing. They all have stuff. They all want everyone to respect their stuff. And so I just think that mutual, like, even if you get on, public transportation, everybody on the public transportation wants to keep their stuff to themselves. They want to get where they're going. And I just think, remembering that and kind of letting that allow you to relax and not be so like, oh my goodness, everybody's trying to do this, but then also at the same time being a little bit aware of that too, that there could be that one person, but just kind of, again, the intuition. But yeah, I would just say culturally, just to, I don't know. I mean, I've done some travel to Asia and stuff, and some of the foods that they eat, some of the traditions that they have, some of the things that they're highly invested in their personal lives are odd or strange to us. And to remember that you're going there to visit their country and that it may be foreign to you, but it's not to them. And just to kind of respect that. It's not something you have to adopt or adapt to for your lifetime, but just while you're there, just to respect that.
Yeah, and that ties into safety, because if you're drawing attention to yourself, or if you're not sort of aware of the cultural ideas of modesty, that can be, yeah. Excellent. Alina or Deb?
I think that was a really good point with what Jennifer just said. So cultural as well with religion, depending where you're going in the world. So me growing up in Germany, basically the countries where I have been to were mostly Christian, so it's not that I ever had really think about it, but I mean, as well, wherever you are, there are people from different religious backgrounds, and you just have to think about it, that maybe they see it in a different way. And even if you get, I'm always like, well, political conversations or religious conversations are maybe not the first great opening if you go somewhere and have to tell about like, oh, this is who I'm voting for, or but I mean, this is common sense, right? People you don't know, you don't start talking about sensitive topics with. And yeah, in general, people are nice and everybody's always happy to talk and to share their culture. So just be open for it and listen what they tell you, and you can really always adapt. That's what I take off. So it's easy to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I would just say keep an open mind. You know, everybody is not a suspect. Everybody is not out to get you. You know, a lot of people, like I said earlier, majority of people are good. So, you know, just go with an open mind. Don't be afraid to talk to people, just especially like, you know, your hotel staff, or, you know, any local, any like restaurant employee. Just ask them some of the things that they like to do, or ask them some of the places that they like to go. I learned that engaging with locals and asking them questions, they actually get, you know, pretty excited. They won't be bothered with you by asking them questions. So I feel like it's always good to just show interest to the locals that are there. And I feel like you'll definitely get like the best recommendations from those type of people. And just when you're meeting overall, you know, new travelers, you know, they may have seen something that you didn't get to see that now you might be interested in. So I would say always be sociable. Don't be closed off. I mean, some of us are introverted, and that's different. But, you know, just don't be afraid to just, you know, greet someone, you know, ask them what do they like to do, what are they into, where do they go to eat. Just you know, have an open mind and talk to people. Be more engaging.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's some of the best stories, you know, too, that come from like just random locals advice or tip or something like that. So cool. And yeah, I would say, I mean, yeah, in terms of kind of just building off what everybody else has been saying, you know, I think we have a tendency to kind of feel fearful in unfamiliar situations when in fact everything is perfectly okay. So really be sure to evaluate, you know, and look around and ask yourself, like, is there actually anything here that I need to be, you know, suspect of, or is that just like a innate kind of, I'm uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar, you know, sort of a reaction. And yeah, like being really friendly, it has a way of like disarming, you know, even, you know, potentially like, you know, negative situations. So yeah, awesome. So I will, I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to answer all the questions from people that have joined us. So we'll transition into that, and feel free to write your questions into the chat box, or turn on your microphone and show us your lovely face, and you know, pipe in with your questions that way. So yeah, I know, Sharon, you were asking about if we're gonna open it up, so now's your chance.
Hi, my name is Ankana. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love traveling, but I have never traveled solo because of the reasons that we were just discussing. And I never quite, you know, got to master the courage to kind of go and explore things on my own, and especially internationally. How can I overcome that fear, or, you know, what are some of the tips that you would give for a first time solo traveler to kind of get out of the comfort zone and get comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Great question. Yeah, I'm sure lots of people here are curious about that. Anyone want to jump in? Jennifer, I know you had some, yeah, we talked about this a little.
Yeah. My advice would be, and this is one reason, these are going to sound like commercials for Traverse, but I really do love Traverse.
We're not paying her, I swear.
So the first trip I went on to Nicaragua, my husband went also. So it wasn't solo. I mean, the two of us joined the group. But when I went to Lisbon, it was 10 days. He couldn't get off. And honestly, not that I didn't want him to go, but it's just fun to get away from my husband and children every once in a while. So I went on that trip solo. But the nice thing was that I was joining a group. So even though I was traveling alone, I was joining an organized trip. So there was an itinerary. We did have free time. Some of the girls wanted to go shopping, and I was like, there's this like castle up there, and I'm going to go walk up and see the castle while you guys shop, because, I like to pick up a few little local souvenirs, but I'm not going to shop. So it's nice because there's time built in where you get to kind of like test the waters and feel like, okay, I'm on my own for 3 hours in this city. But there's also the safety net that if you're not at the meeting point that you're supposed to be at, or you're not at dinner when you're supposed to be, people are looking for you. Whereas if you just go out in the world and book a ticket and be like, yeah, I'm going to go to Tahiti by myself for 3 months and see where I go from there. I mean, that is really intimidating if you've never traveled by yourself before. So I would say the structure of a trip, and then you get to meet people there. That's also a good segue into traveling alone and organizing a true solo trip, is to, meet a group and then kind of get to know the people within the group too. So I would highly recommend maybe doing an intermediate step of some sort in between, like, I've never traveled by myself, and, by everybody, you'll see me in 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Easing your way in. And sometimes that helps to like pick destinations that you feel are safer, for the first few times, that you kind of test the waters, and then you'll build up your courage and your, kind of feeling that you're capable and okay to do that.
Yeah.
And up the ante.
Thank you so much.
Alina or Deb, did you have anything to add to that?
I actually think that was a really good answer Jennifer said, because definitely it's maybe stay closer in the beginning as well. So you don't have to go, depending when you're from Europe, you don't have to go to South America or Central America first. You can stay close within Europe and do city trips, or the other way around. So it doesn't have to be far away as well. You can go different countries, different cultures, you can already get to know in a different country close to you. So don't plan the super far trips.
I would say, like, kind of to piggyback off of what Alina said, if you're not comfortable getting on a plane and flying somewhere far, you could hop on a bus or a train and go to a new city that's maybe 1 or 2 hours away and start there. Or you can get in your car if you have a car, or you can rent a car and drive to a new city. So you don't have to start off on the other side of the world for that to be considered, traveling. Traveling is just going to an unfamiliar place. So I live in New York City. If I want to go 2 hours to Pennsylvania, that's still considered traveling. So maybe start off with like places that are closer to you and get more comfortable that way. And then as you do more of those local trips, then you'll build the confidence to do, a trip that's further away.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. All good points. So yeah, starting small and kind of, building up is sort of the main way to go with that. And I would also say, like, even if you're an introvert, try and push yourself out, because the more that you talk and engage with people, the less you'll be solo. In fact, traveling solo is often, I feel like I'm around more people than when I'm traveling with like a travel buddy, because you're just constantly meeting people. So yeah, and engaging with the staff at the hotel and the, restaurants and stuff is, nice to kind of have that rapport and people that are aware of your presence and looking out for you. So awesome.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry. Is there
yeah.
like a line, a waiting?
No,
Okay.
jump right in.
So I just joined this group for the first time because I started to look for groups on Meetup because I wanted to travel. And right now, what I'm thinking about and what I'm kind of planning is to drive to Florida. So is there a way, like, by joining these Zoom groups, is there possible to find ladies that wanna like get together and go? Is like something, because that was my purpose to, not purpose, but of course all those tips are very extremely useful, but also just wanted to sort of like a mingle and network for the purpose of finding someone to drive with. Is that even possible? Did anyone ever do it, actually?
I think I'll take that because I think you're talking about our meetup groups. Is that correct? Did you join
Yeah.
a meetup group? Yeah. Okay. So typically we had in-person events with the meetup groups where you could, meet and mingle and chat with other members of the meetup group. Obviously, all that's kind of been put on hold, and we're doing virtual events for now, which is a little less sort of ideal for mingling and general chat. But you can always use the discussion board in the meetup group to post, hey, looking for someone to, join me here, or anyone interested in going there. So you can engage in conversation on the meetup group itself. And then, yeah, hopefully, we'll get back to those in-person mingle type events soon.
But of course, right now in person is not happening. So that's why just wanted to see if anyone knows anyone or would like to go or anything like that. So it's kind of like just trying to see if there is any responses, but I'm gonna put it in the chat. Thank you so much.
Yeah, anybody who wants a travel buddy, shout out to Yana in the chat.
That's true. If you are on Facebook, you can search solo female travel and several groups will come up, and some of those groups have thousands and thousands and thousands of people in them. So you could join one of those groups, and even if you don't find a travel buddy, they could say, hey, make sure you go to this town, or ooh, avoid this place, this isn't safe. So it's a good place to just get ideas. And I mean, because there's people that are living all over the world and traveling all over the world.
Yeah, so that's a very good, I joined few groups, but none of those, you said it's called solo travelers?
I think it's called solo female travelers. If you put it in the search bar, I'm sure several groups will come up.
Thank you so much.
And that reminds me too, there's another community called Wanderful, and they are all women, and you can become a member, and there's all kinds of content in terms of travel tips and safety and advice specifically geared towards women. And there's, again, there would be chapters in different cities that'll do in-person events, but they're also doing virtual events now, and it's a community of female travelers. So Wanderful is another good resource.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions? Don't be shy. Feel free to jump in. I'll give you another minute, and then I'll go ahead and ask a question if nobody else wants to.
Are there any countries that you think solo female travelers should avoid?
Good question.
Safety
Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan. Those are obvious, I guess, but I think it depends on what you're comfortable with, because I mean, there's a bunch of countries besides those ones I just mentioned that are rolling around in my head, but would you feel comfortable going to Asia? I mean, there's several places that you can go, but also when you think about the fact that they don't use letters, they use characters, and their language is so different from ours. And one good thing about speaking English is that is pretty much, if somebody's going to learn a second language, that is usually what it is. So no matter where you go, you'll find a lot of English speakers. So that's really helpful if, for speaking English too. But I can't think of any, off the top of my head that I've been to personally that I would say, don't go there.
Anybody else?
I would say if safety is your concern, because that's if I think that's what you mean when you ask, is there a place that women traveling solo should avoid? If it's about safety, then I feel like there are no places that are 100% safe, and then there's no places that are 100% unsafe. Those places like Iran, Iraq, they're deemed dangerous. But I also have a friend who traveled to both of them solo and had a good time.
Oh wow!
So it's really all how you look at it. I mean, these are, I would say, as long as they're not some sort of active war going on, then I feel like you can navigate through any place as long as you stay in your central area, talk to your hotel or hostel staff or your Airbnb host. But as far as a place that women shouldn't go to, I don't really have any that I would say, no, a woman shouldn't go there alone.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That answer.
Yeah, I mean, it really does depend a lot on your own like personal level of comfort. Alina, sorry, were you about to say something?
No, I just literally wanted to say I totally agree on what the other two girls said. And yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you say it, Jeannie Travato said, I always try to know a few phrases in the local language. I found it goes a long way. I mean, that's true. To be able to at least get around phrases or, you know, directional or polite phrases like excuse me or please. Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, usually is very well appreciated by locals.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Of course.
So because I live in the States and I've never traveled to Europe, and since we have Alina who's from Europe, so one quick question. So if we are traveling to Europe, what is the best way of, you know, when you're spending some money, is the best way to deal in cards or local currency, or how do you kind of, or does it vary from country to country within Europe? So any tips on that?
So yeah, I mean, with the European Union, you have a lot of countries which have the euro. So it's one local currency, not one local currency. It is one currency for many countries. So it is not as common. So when I started traveling outside of Europe, I learned, for example, here in Costa Rica, you can often use US dollars to pay. So in Europe, that is not really common. So everything is priced in euros, the countries that use the euro. If you go, there are a few countries which still have their own currency, like, for example, Switzerland, the United Kingdom. But it's always easy to go to the banks there and to exchange the money. And so it is normally you always pay in the currency that is actual in that country.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We had a question, someone, when they were registering, about, just while we were talking about costs and you know, money and stuff like that. Are there any tips that you guys have about how to keep costs down even when you're traveling solo? Because sometimes solo travel can, you know, mean that you're paying for, you know, more than if you're traveling with several people. So any tips to, you know, kind of keep those costs down?
I mean, I have seen that in Costa Rica a lot. So in Europe, it's not as, you don't have that extreme. So I feel like in Costa Rica is a really expensive country as well, compared to other countries in Central America. In general, to keep the costs down, I'm always like, it's a good idea to use the public transport if possible. Hostels are definitely always cheaper than private rooms. So if you use a dorm room, that definitely takes the costs down. And depending on which country you are, like the good thing is on hostels, you always have kitchens there. So you can prepare your own meals. You don't have to go every time out, because that's just something that really adds up. And I like to stay in places where I have the possibility to use a kitchen, to prepare my meal. And that's something I like in hostels as well. People get together about food. So you're literally cooking something in the kitchen and somebody else walks in and they're like, what are you cooking? And hey, I have this, let me throw this in. And it's always a great meal.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. Having a kitchen is a good way to keep costs down a bit.
I would say food is a really big one too for me. I mean, you want to experience the local cuisine, of course, but a lot of, especially in Europe, a lot of the places give you a really hearty breakfast. So if you're a breakfast skipper, like don't skip breakfast, maybe skip lunch, like load up on your breakfast and maybe take a roll with you to go, or a pastry for later if you get hungry. So if you can just get down to like breakfast, which is included with your room, and then dinner, then you're not, you know, spending as much on that. That's been helpful for me personally. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say what Alina mentioned earlier, try to, as much as you can, try to stick to public transportation. That's always cheaper to get around. And what Jennifer said with the restaurants, there are some places in particularly Europe that will have like lunch specials or brunch specials where you can get like a main course and a glass of wine or something for, I don't know, like maybe 15 euro or something like that. So, you know, try to find those places with lunch specials. And to keep costs down, believe it or not, I actually, when it comes to flights, I always go after deals as opposed to destinations. So when people ask me where am I going next, it's wherever's on sale. So wherever I can find a cheap flight to, that's where I'm going next, because a lot of times your flight can really be like a chunk of your budget for your trip. And I found some really affordable flights on theflightdeal.com is a good one. Secret Flying, I think secretflying.com, sorry. Airfare Watchdog. Those are good websites to help you like find like random cheap deals from your city. You can just highlight your city and it'll show you flight deals going from there. And I would pretty much pick my travels from like what's the most affordable flight at that time.
That arrives during the day.
And I did someone else's comment about arriving at night. If that's the only option, then it is what it is. But you know, preference wise, I would say I would rather arrive during the day.
Yeah, and if you are arriving at night, like arrange, you know, making sure you have like an airport pickup or, you know, something
Right.
so that it's all seamless and smooth is helpful for sure. I knew we had another question in the registration about, and I'm going to direct this to Jennifer, traveling with kids. You know, how do you manage, you know, traveling with kids? And the question was also about like keeping to a budget, but any advice, I'm sure traveling with kids is a whole different ballpark.
Yeah, I don't know. That's such a broad category. I'm like, so I've traveled with all three. Like I said, my two, I went to Nepal, when one was 7 and then 2 years later when the other was 7. And that's a really long trip. I mean, it takes like 24 hours to get there. So I think at that age, just kind of talking them through it. Kids don't like surprises. Like if it's bedtime and you say it's time to go to bed right now, they're like, oh, I was playing. Whereas if 20 minutes earlier, you would have said, we're going to get ready for bed in, 15 to 20 minutes, then they're mentally prepared. So if you mentally prepare them, it's going to be a long flight. We're going to grab a bite to eat here. We're going to do that, keep snacks in your bag and all of that kind of stuff. I think talking to them if they're of the age. And then my one daughter, she was 1, and we flew on Aer Lingus, and the flight attendants were super nice, and they had a bassinet that came out of I sat in the head seat, and it had a bassinet that came so she could just sleep right there. And so I think be willing to accept help, because people, obviously not too much. You don't want people stealing your kids, but like in that situation, it was helpful. Make sure the trip is appropriate for them. We were going to visit children's homes in Nepal, which is why I took my kids. They had an amazing time, lifetime worth of memories. But I would also say to just not be uptight, to kind of just relax, because kids are unpredictable. Travel's unpredictable. You put the two together and well, there you go. So I would just say to mentally prepare yourself that if you have to have everything like this, it may not be like that. You just kind of have to take a breather and be like, okay, what are we going to do about this? So I would say just kind of, I don't know, kind of go with the flow a little bit more than you would normally.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jennifer. Any other questions from the group? We'll probably have time for like one more and then a kind of wrap up question.
I would just say one thing real quick about deals. Yeah. This was kind of interesting. So when I was in Lisbon, there was this huge elevator to get to this beautiful vantage point. There was a line for the elevator. It was expensive. And then the girl I was with, she checked Yelp really quick, and she was like, there's an elevator over here that's behind this shop and it's free. And so we literally were like, oh, like we didn't know that. And so we got up to see everything that everybody else did. Yeah, we didn't get to ride in the beautiful scrolly elevator, but that's not why we were doing it. We wanted to see the vantage point. So like if you have self-service, I'm too cheap and I never pay for self-service. I just rely on Wi-Fi. But if you have self-service when you're out and about, maybe if you're at an attraction, just really quickly scan TripAdvisor or Yelp. I went to another place in Lisbon that had the castle and the gardens. I got the ticket for both. And after I did it, I was super disappointed because I didn't need to see the inside because the outside was as beautiful, and tips like that are on those places. So if you want to save a little bit here and there, you know, to look up like, oh, I'm going to this thing. Or, does anybody have any travel tips or deals? Or you can really skip this part. I mean, that'll help you on the fly. Just save a little bit here and there, which will add up on your trip.
Yeah, research, really. It'll make things, you know, much more smooth, and, you know, you'll just feel armed with knowledge. So yeah,
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to kind of toss up one more final question just to wrap things up. So, you know, we've talked a lot about how, you know, travel is a really incredible experience and people are really great. And, you know, it's you kind of curbing your fears. Is there any, you know, like lessons that you've learned from like potentially precarious situations that you found yourself in? You know, things that you're like, oh, I'm not going to do that again, or okay, here's my takeaway, you know, from yeah, maybe a moment where it wasn't ideal.
I feel like I'm repeating myself.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, so I never had a bad experience while traveling. So it was more in my head. So it was often that I was nervous, and sometimes it didn't work out that I was able to get in a new town when it was still light outside, and that just already hyped me up so much that I got really nervous. And at the end of the day, when I was safely in my hotel, I was like, okay, you could have just not have get so hyped up about that. Everything is good. I mean, be cautious. Think about where you're going. Don't go head over heels in the next taxi without knowing what's happening there. But yeah, it is a lot in our heads while you're traveling. So relax.
Anybody else want to pipe in? No pressure. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the moral of the story is that it's been largely positive, you know, from all of our, you know, ladies joining us, and, you know, that's what you'll usually find, you know, from other female travelers, you know, in blogs and articles written. So yeah, if you take anything away from tonight, you know, I would say, you know, that the, you know, fears and the hesitancies are an okay thing in the sense that they'll make you, you know, prepare and research and you know, go into it, you know, not just on the fly, but once you're there, you know, besides trusting your sort of instincts and spidey sense, you know, it's more about being open and realizing that, you know, 99% of the people in this world are good, and, you know, it's probably more enjoyable to live in that, lean towards, you know, assuming the good instead of assuming the worst, for sure. So yeah, I wanted to just also mention that we have a couple more events coming up. If anybody's interested in joining us, November 15th, we have another Traverse talk like this with panelists, and we're going to be talking about sustainable travel, responsible travel, regenerative travel, especially in the wake of COVID, and, you know, rebuilding travel and tourism in a more sustainable way. And then we also have an event that's destination focused that we'll be sort of traveling virtually to Chile in November 21st. And yeah, we often, you know, like I said, have a couple events every month. So you can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. You can keep tabs on our, you know, Eventbrite posts. You can also join our meetup groups. The website is traversejourneys.com. If you have any questions, you can email hello@traversejourneys.com. And we're always happy to help and share information and, you know, empower travelers and women travelers to get out there and see the big, beautiful world. So thank you everyone again for joining, and I hope to see you at another event in the future. And thank you to Deb, Alina, and Jennifer. You guys were fantastic, and it was great to have your voices on the call, on the event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy travels whenever we get to go.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's going to be a good one.
Excellent, everybody. Yeah, here's hoping for 2021.